Have you ever looked out a window and felt like the view was somehow reflecting back your own, journey, your own hopes and desires? Today, we're diving deep into some letters from Vincent van Gogh, the ones from his time in England back in 1876.
Yeah, an interesting time for him.
And these letters aren't just about art, which is what you'd expect. They're really personal, a glimpse into his spiritual side, his aspirations as he's considering maybe becoming a minister.
A side of him not everyone knows. It's a bit of a hidden chapter, you could say.
Exactly. You were the one who brought these letters to our attention, right? And what a story they tell a man searching for meaning in new places, new faces.
Searching, questioning, grappling with big ideas. It's all right there in the letters.
So we're talking about excerpts from letters Vincent wrote mostly to his brother Theo while he was in Ramsgate and Isleworth, right?
Right, from May to October 1876. A time when he was teaching at a school and really exploring this religious path.
Okay, so let's dig in. Our mission, if you will, is to uncover what these letters reveal about Vincent's state of mind, his observations of the world around him, and how his faith was developing during this time.
A pivotal time for him, no doubt.
Exactly. And for our listeners, it's a chance to see a different side of this iconic artist through a very personal lens.
A lens that might surprise some people.
Absolutely. So we start in Ramsgate, on the coast. Vincent writes this incredible description of a storm at sea in a letter from May 76.
Oh, yes. A vivid one.
It's not just a quick mention. He goes into detail. The sea all churned up, yellowish, these dark, heavy clouds, rain coming down sideways. He even compares the scene to Durer's etchings. I know, you could practically see it. This wild, untamed power of nature.
And then him, seeing it through an artist's eye, finding those details that remind him of a master engraver.
Exactly. It makes you think, even when he's focused on this intense natural phenomenon, his artistic side, it's still right there.
Always observing, drawing comparisons, finding beauty in the unexpected.
But it wasn't all storms and drama. He also found moments of peace and beauty by the sea. He describes this one Sunday night darkness slowly fading into dawn, a skylark singing, then nightingales joining in, the lights twinkling in the distance from the lighthouse and the guard ship.
A beautiful image.
So peaceful, contemplative, you can almost feel the stillness, the sense of anticipation for the day ahead.
He captures that mood, that atmosphere so well, a bit like how he'll later capture light and shadow in his paintings.
That's a great point. So from this vast seascape, he shifts his focus to something much smaller, more intimate, the view from his room window. Dark elm trees against the night sky, and one single star.
One star.
Yes, but he describes it so beautifully. Beautiful, big, friendly. This one star becomes a kind of focal point for him. He starts thinking about his family, praying for their well-being, and also that he wouldn't bring them shame.
It's a vulnerable moment. He's opening up about his worries, his anxieties, his deep love for his family.
It's really touching. And he adds to the poignancy by including a little drawing in the letter.
A draw?
Yes. It's the view from the school window. But it's not just any view. It's the boys watching their parents leave. He even notes that many of them will never forget that scene. It's such an ordinary moment, yet so full of emotion.
The act of separation, the longing, he captures that in a simple drawing.
His empathy for these boys really shines through in his letters. He talks about their daily lives at Mr. Stokes' school, the rainy days, how disappointed they are when they miss a meal, the dark stairs leading down to dinner, even the dilapidated washroom. He doesn't sugarcoat it at all.
No, he doesn't. He sees their hardships, their limited prospects, and he wants to experience it all with them, even a winter at the school, to truly understand their lives.
He even mentions an earlier walking tour he took to Brighton, which to me speaks to his love for exploring, for connecting with the landscape, maybe even with his own thoughts.
Walking, thinking, observing, it seems like a theme for him. And it makes sense considering those long walks he'll take later in life through the countryside.
So we've seen how keenly he observed the external world in Ramsgate. But what about his inner world, his spiritual side? During this time, he writes about a great longing for religion among the people in the big cities, how city life can affect their faith, even referencing George Eliot's Lantern Yard.
Wow, he was well read, wasn't he?
It seems so. And he's not just focused on his own journey, he's connecting it to a bigger picture, a social and spiritual context.
And that's important. It shows he's thinking about these issues on a broader scale, not just personally.
And this leads him to articulate a specific desire. A job between clergyman and missionary, among working people in the suburbs of London.
Interesting. Not just any religious role, but one that's very hands-on, focused on serving those in need.
Exactly. He's drawn to a practical, active form of ministry.
And it makes you wonder, was this common at the time, or was there something unique about Vincent's motivation here?
That's a great question. I think his empathy for the working class, which we see in his letters about the schoolboys, plays a big role. He wants to connect with them, help them, in a way that goes beyond the traditional church setting.
Makes sense.
We even have an excerpt from a letter he wrote to a potential employer in June of '76. It's incredibly insightful. He details his background, being a clergyman's son, his time at Goupil's, his experiences in London and Paris, even his current teaching position.
Laying it all out there.
And he's very upfront about not having any formal theological training.
That's bold.
But he spins it in a positive light. He talks about his diverse experiences, his language skills as strengths, things that could actually be valuable in this kind of role.
It shows a real self-awareness and also a strategic mind.
He doesn't shy away from his unconventional path.
Quite the opposite. He embraces it.
And what really shines through is his genuine love for the church, his innate love,
Yeah.
as he puts it. He even talks about his love of God and of man and acknowledges feeling inadequate, which is so humble.
It's heartfelt. You can feel his sincerity in every word.
He even brings up the parable of the prodigal son, saying it reflects his own feelings.
Ah, a sense of straying, needing redemption, but also a desire to return, to be accepted.
And he mentions attending the recipient's church in London before, asking for their guidance and recommendation. It's a combination of personal reflection and practical action.
He's reaching out, seeking mentorship, putting himself out there.
And then he ends with this line that just stays with you. The early dew of morning has passed away at noon.
Whoa, what a line.
It's like this acknowledgement that he hasn't followed a traditional path, that maybe he's missed some opportunities, but there's still hope, a yearning for something more.
It's about time passing, yeah, but also about a reawakening, a new direction.
So from there, he makes a big move to Isleworth to be an assistant preacher for Reverend Thomas Slade Jones.
So he actually gets a position.
He does. And he lives with the minister and his wife, a very different environment from the school in Ramsgate.
A total immersion in religious life.
And it seems he enjoyed exploring English culture during this time. He mentions his fondness for English poetry and hymns, even copying them into letters and albums.
Interesting. Soaking it all up, finding beauty in words, in music.
He also describes the city with his artist's eye, the foggy evenings with lamps glowing, the sunsets in the park with elm trees, mist, swans, acacia trees. Even in this religious context, his artistic sensibilities are still very much alive.
It's like he can't help but see the world through this artistic lens. It's part of him.
And maybe it's what allows him to find these deeper meanings, to connect the everyday with the spiritual. But here's where it gets really interesting. His favorite reading during this time was John Bunyan's The Pilgrim's Progress.
The classic allegory of the spiritual journey.
Exactly. He even connects it to a Botten painting and his own walk to Canterbury. Clearly, this theme of life as a spiritual pilgrimage really resonated with him.
It's a powerful metaphor. And it makes sense, considering what we've seen in his letters, the searching, the longing, the sense of being on a path towards something.
And he doesn't just read about it, he experiences it. He describes a landscape that inspires him to think about the Pilgrim's Progress. A sandy path leading to a sunlit holy city. A weary pilgrim encountering this figure, sorrowful yet always rejoicing.
That's so evocative.
And he quotes this dialogue about the uphill road, the long journey ahead. It's like he's visualizing his own spiritual path.
The landscape becomes a symbol, a mirror for his internal struggles and aspirations.
He also shares these very personal reflections on his own spiritual growth, wanting to be closer to Christ, experiencing both joy and sorrow, finding peace in God.
It's raw, honest. He's not pretending to have all the answers. He's grappling with these big questions, these emotions.
And then he reaches a milestone, his first sermon, delivered in God's house in Richmond. He describes it as emerging from a dark vault underground into the friendly light of day.
Wow, that's a powerful image.
It sounds transformative, like a culmination of all this searching, all this longing.
And he paints this beautiful picture of his walk to Richmond along the Thames, mirroring the trees and the sky and the water, the town in the distance.
The outward beauty mirroring the inward significance of the day.
It's like everything is aligned In harmony.
He talks about the potential loneliness of a preacher, but finds comfort in God's presence, quoting, "And yet I am not alone because the Father is with me."
That's a powerful reminder that even in isolation, there's this sense of connection, of support.
He even quotes hymns that reflect his faith and trusting God, especially during tough times.
Finding solace in shared words, shared beliefs.
And then he mentions longing for Christmas and feeling older, a little melancholy, but also relatable.
A touch of homesickness, maybe, and a sense of time passing, the weight of experience.
Then he quotes Psalm 42, expressing his soul's thirst for God.
That's a raw, emotional cry, a yearning for something deeper, something more.
He also reflects on disappointment, sickness, trouble, urging thankfulness and humility, quoting, "On this man will I look, even on him who is poor and sorrowful and who trembleth at my word."
A message of finding grace in suffering, in vulnerability.
And then another beautiful description, an evening walk in Richmond, the sunset, the rising moon, an old lady passing by, a bonfire burning. He connects it to a hymn about the evening of life.
He sees the sacred in the everyday, those little moments, those fleeting images.
He mentions he's going to preach on John and Theogenes and then shares his experience at the pulpit praying, "Abba, Father, in thy name be our beginning."
That's a very intimate prayer, a direct appeal, full of trust.
And thankfully, he included the sermon itself in his letter. It's based on Psalm 119.19. "I am a stranger in the earth, hide not thy commandments from me."
So, right from the start, he's setting the theme, this idea of being a pilgrim searching for guidance.
Exactly. He talks about life as a journey, from mother to father, from earthly life to heaven. He talks about the mix of sorrow and joy, how earthly sorrow contrasts with heavenly joy, and the idea that sorrow can actually lead to a better heart.
It's a mature understanding of suffering, acknowledging its presence, but also its potential for growth.
He emphasizes this Christian perspective of being sorrowful, yet always rejoicing, finding hope in the face of death and sorrow.
It's a paradox, but a powerful one, holding both sorrow and joy at the same time.
He stresses the importance of loving God and neighbor, using the analogy of life as a sea journey with storms.
A relatable analogy, we've all been through those metaphorical storms.
He even references Psalm 107 and the story of Jesus walking on water.
Drawing on those familiar stories to provide comfort, guidance.
And he directly addresses the listener, encouraging them to reflect on their own storms of life.
It's like he's speaking directly to us across time and space.
He talks about the comfort of hearing God's voice saying, "It is I, be not afraid."
A message of reassurance, of finding peace amidst chaos.
And he talks about the need to let love for God guide our lives, the longing for peace and rest for our souls.
Beautiful sentiments.
He even points out that calm seas, while pleasant, don't teach us as much as those difficult times, those storms.
That's an interesting point. We often learn the most through adversity.
And he talks about the lasting impact of early faith and how it can be rekindled.
Hopeful, encouraging. Even if faith has faded, it can be reignited.
He ends with a prayer for guidance, protection from evil, and contentment, and then returns to that image of the Pilgrim's Progress, the beautiful evening landscape, the encounter with the figure who embodies sorrowful, yet always rejoicing.
Bringing it full circle.
And the dialogue about the uphill road, the long journey ahead, really emphasizes this idea of perseverance, of never giving up hope.
Powerful imagery.
He concludes with thoughts on the hidden meaning in everyday life and the sense of brotherhood and faith.
Finding connection, purpose in the ordinary.
And then a final benediction and a reading from Psalm 91 about God's protection and comfort.
It's a beautifully crafted sermon full of insight, emotion, and hope.
Finally, we have this last excerpt from a letter describing his experience leading a service for Mr. Jones at Turnham Common. He talks about walking with one of the older boys, noticing his character, and recommending George Eliot's Felix Holt to him.
Combining pastoral care with intellectual stimulation.
And he ends by mentioning the beauty of the park at night and the pleasant experience of speaking in the little wooden church.
Finding peace and purpose in those simple moments.
So to wrap it up, these letters give us such a rich picture of Vincent, his empathy for others, his deep spiritual searching, his artist's eye that found beauty even in melancholy scenes.
And they remind us that even the most iconic figures had their own struggles, their own journeys of self-discovery.
His time in England was clearly a period of immense personal and spiritual growth, shaping the passions that would later define him.
It's fascinating to think how these experiences, these early explorations, might have influenced his later work as an artist.
So for our listeners, take a moment to reflect on Vincent's questions, his longings that search for meaning, finding comfort and faith during tough times, seeing the sacred in everyday life. How did these things resonate with your own experiences?
It's a universal human story, one that continues to speak to us across generations.
Vincent van Gogh's path ultimately led him to express himself through art. But these letters offer a glimpse into a different possibility, a life dedicated to religious service. What might have become of him had he continued down that path?
And how might his artistic sensibilities have intertwined with that life? It's a question that lingers, a fascinating what if to ponder.
It is. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the mind and heart of Vincent van Gogh.
It's been my pleasure.